You're listening to the Retro Viking Podcast, the best retro gaming podcast on the market. Let's stream like it's 1998.
Hello everyone, how are you tonight? This is the Retro Viking and welcome to this special live stream for the Retro Viking Podcast. And today I am joined by somebody that I look up to, Mr. Chris Barter, also known as Professor Laserbooks from the Flip the Table Podcast. How are you, Mr. Professor Laserbooks?
I am excellent.
So, for those of you that have no clue what I'm talking about, the Flip the Table crew, they are a bunch of gamers, and they're both video game and especially board gamers, and they decided to form a podcast back in 2012, if I'm not mistaken, so it's already been 6 years.
Yeah.
And they basically, their gimmick is their tagline is they go for cheesy, weird, and obscure games, board games, and they recorded over 111 episodes before eventually the podcast decided to take a break. So is it going to be a permanent or not permanent? I'm not sure, but that's why I invited Mr. Barter to the podcast, because we're going to be able to talk about board games, video games, and we're going to have a whole lot of fun. So if you guys are on the live stream, go ahead and feel free to ask your questions as we go through them. I'll try to pick the most interesting ones and read them out. So Mr. Barter, so can you tell us a little bit about yourself and basically who you are and where you come from?
Well, my name for Flip the Table, Professor Laserbooks, part of it came from necessity. Because 3 out of the 4 panelists are named Chris, and in an audio format that becomes intensely confusing for listeners. So one Chris is a party clown, so he was Flip, and our moderator was Moderator Chris, and I became Professor Laserbooks kind of organically. An early episode we were doing a G.I. Joe board game that was almost unplayable. But we got riffing about the names of G.I. Joe characters and how kind of strange they are. The names are supposed to indicate something about what they do or whatever, but they're always like really intense for no reason. And yeah, there it is. So yeah, we were joking about like what each of our G.I. Joe names were, and I think the other panelist, Jared, came up with like, you're a professor,
yeah,
but just being a professor isn't a violent sounding name enough for G.I. Joe. It has to be like something's blowing up or getting lasered, like laser books or something like that. So it kind of stuck, and we needed it anyway because we couldn't have 3 Chris's on an audio podcast. So yeah, it's Flip the Table is quite a journey. There's a lot of bad games, but we try to like keep our heads up and stay positive and be good humored about all of it, and we did that for the most part. But yeah, it's we talk a lot about every corner of kind of gaming culture, if you want to call it that. Video games, board games, dice and paper games. We were doing board games, but so many of them came from like video game licenses or movie licenses that we got into different parts of pop cultures.
Yeah, no, and actually that is one of the reasons why I decided to reach out to you, because being a loyal listener, even 1 year after you guys decided to stop the podcast, I still listen to you guys on a daily basis. You guys are so entertaining, and all of these references, a lot of video game references throughout different episodes. I have an example here when you guys did episode 49, The Legend of Zelda.
Yeah.
and if you guys never listened to this episode, I don't want to spoil it, but you guys will notice that at the end of every episode they have what they call the Battle of Wits, which is my favorite part. And it's something that I would love to bring eventually in our podcast. It's basically like a game show. So the person that picks the game, they prepare a little quiz. And I just want to let you guys know that this was back in 2014. So it was 4 years ago. It was a different time period. But if you guys listen to that episode and listen to the Battle of Wits, you guys will see that there's something that's going on that flipped the table. Some of them have... I don't want to spoil it, but I'm like, man, this is creepy. For those that listen to it, I'm sure that they know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah. Mistakes were made. It's our kind of resident. This episode, the Zelda episode, came from our resident kind of video game guru, Jared.
Jared, that we can see.
Yes, professional wrestling expert as well. But yeah, he has his own Twitch channel as well. He does a lot of like live streaming old games. He's interested in trying to break a couple records, like speedrun records for a couple specific games. But he's kind of our video game guy. And yeah, if you like bad old board games, or board games in general, if you like Zelda or games of that era, or if you like dice and paper games, or any combination of the three, you will like the Battle of Wits for that episode.
Oh yeah,
quite a thing.
This is one of my favorite episodes. Like I said, the Battle of Wits, and even listening to you guys talk about the Zelda game, that was amazing. So now, as I mentioned, the crew decided to put a stop to the recordings of the episode back in, I believe it was in July of 2017. So it's been over a year, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So what have you been up to since your adventure with Flip the Table? What do you do now?
Well, it's we stopped the podcast really because all four of us at the same time kind of reached different points in our lives where like things are kind of breaking off, and we're still in contact with each other and we still have time, but one of us moved away.
Yep. And
three of us either had new jobs or new kids.
Yeah, new kids.
All at the same time. So like I have a 4-year-old. Jared has a couple of kids now. Yep. And Chris has a kid as well, and Flip has a cat.
Yes, yeah, he still has his cat.
But the timing just kind of worked to kind of make a clean break, and we went out on our own terms. We didn't just kind of peter to a halt. We put an end to it. But my namesake kind of went with the podcast. I was an actual professor for 9 years, and I changed careers, not because the podcast ended, but as it happens, I changed careers about the same time the podcast ended. So I'm currently working in the printing, like sort of commercial industrial sphere.
Okay.
I still teach classes, online classes and night classes as well. They didn't take my degree away when I stopped teaching. So yeah, I mean, I'm still interested in teaching, but without getting too far down that rabbit hole, it's hard to make a career of it in the way I was doing it. So I kind of made a career shift, and it happened to happen around the same time as Flip the Table ended. So
okay, that's what I had understood. I knew because I do remember following you on Facebook and seeing that you were starting a new job, and I was like, oh man, He's no longer going to be the professor, but you'll always be the professor to me. And I need to ask you, in one episode, now I have it blank. I don't remember which one. It's going to come back to me eventually. There was one episode where you mentioned that you were going to put different questions for your students on an exam. What was name a sci-fi villain? What is the first? What's going to be the first fast food chain restaurant in space? I think it was a Star Wars game, or was it the Star Trek?
It might have been.
It was the Omega virus. I remember. It was the Omega. Yes, Flip had gone through different colleagues and his wife's colleagues, and he had done this big survey. that was a random one.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, Flip did a lot of research for his stuff. I mean, for his board game picks, for his Battle of Wits, because whoever picked the game kind of led the episode and wrote the fake quiz show at the end. He always did a ton of research, and he reached out to we had a and we still kind of do have a pretty vibrant Facebook community. He reached out to them and said hey, what, he would pose Family Feud type survey type answers or questions to the readers, and they use those as the answers to the Battle of Wits. And he always did a ton of work for that. But yeah, I joked a few times about when I would give quizzes in a lit class or something, putting bonus questions on the quiz that had nothing to do with literature. Sometimes I'd give them a simple solve for X algebra problem, and they thought some of the students just refused to do it. They were like, "No, this is not a math class. I'm not doing this."
Yeah, because you're an English professor, right? So
yeah,
they're going.
But, I mean, the clever or persistent ones were like, "He's saying this question's worth 3 extra points. I'm just going to solve for X," and they just do it, and they look at me like,
"What are you doing?"
Real? But yeah, sometimes I'd ask them really, because I'm also I studied a lot of history as well. I'm a big history nerd, so I would ask them really stupid, pointlessly obscure questions about the Crimean War or something, and no one ever got those things. But yeah, it's I love teaching. I'm still passionate about education, and I'm still glad to be doing it, just in a different capacity.
Okay, well, that's pretty cool. And as I was saying before, in a lot of episodes, I noticed that and of course, every episode is about an hour long, so we're talking over 100 hours worth of listening material on Flip the Table. And of course, we get to learn to know about you guys, and especially I was lucky enough to find you guys back. I think I found you guys just before you joined the Dice Tower Network. Sorry about that. I think it was the WWE DVD board game. It was the 3rd or 4th episode that I started listening to you guys, and immediately I saw Jared is a wrestling guy. Moderator Chris is the Monopoly guy, is the game show quiz guy, and Flip is a literal clown.
Yeah, he's a literal party clown. Yeah.
So and I was lucky enough to get to I was aware when you had your daughter, when all these events were happening, when you got married. And so anyways, it was a very, very special experience for me. And I noticed all these video game references, especially about Final Fantasy. Also, there was the Sonic episode where which brings me to which brings me basically for regarding video games. I noticed that you probably made the most reference to video games. I presume that you're also a video game hobbyist. What type of games, what kind of video gamer are you?
Well, I play. I think 2/3 of the games I play now are older games from like the late 80s, early 90s, like NES, SNES era. I mean, I grew up with the NES. I grew up in the 80s, but I really kind of came into my own. The Justin Bieber game. I really, I came into my own as a video gamer during the Super Nintendo era, especially the RPGs and strategy games from that console are and still are kind of my jam. So I'm always going back to those. But I mean, presently I'm playing either old Super Nintendo games or I'm playing like indie games on Steam.
Mm-hmm.
I actually don't have a working modern console, which is kind of shameful. But I've just been playing on PC for so long that I'm used to it. I had a Wii that I got on release day, and that was the most modern console I owned for a really long time. It just died earlier this year. I can't remember which year the Wii came out, but that thing was a tank. It survived 10 years. I mean, I should say no. That I do have a 3DS, and I am loving that. I play a lot of Concept Revolt on the 3DS.
Okay.
Concept is the simplest way to describe it is Monopoly and Magic the Gathering. Super weird baby.
Yes, I'm trying to remember. I don't remember in which episode, but this is something that you guys did reference in one of the Flip the Table episodes.
Yeah.
Very quickly, and I had no clue it was really a thing. That okay, so it's really a Monopoly and Magic the Gathering like mashup.
Oh yeah, it's so you have to be careful because I think it was originally people can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was originally a Dreamcast game that was ported to the PlayStation 2.
Okay.
Both of which had incredibly, hilariously bad translation. And anybody that's tried to play a collectible card game like Pokemon or Magic or something knows how important language is. And if the translation's bad, it could really cause problems. And that first run was really a rough ride, but you could still see like the core of a great game there. It's like Monopoly where you roll dice and you walk around a board, but when you run into like an unoccupied territory, instead of paying money to buy it and get a deed, you pay like magic points to summon a monster from cards in your hand to occupy the territory. And then when somebody lands there, they can either pay the toll or fight the monster and take it over. So it's a little bit more dynamic than Monopoly, and it has a deck building aspect like Magic does.
Wow. So oh wow, okay. Yeah, I believe I did play that game. It was on, I think it was on PS2. I used to, I shouldn't say this out loud, but back when I used to have a PS2 like 10, 15 years ago, I had a modded PS2 and then we had like all these burnt games in this big catalog, and I think that was one of the games that I had.
It's really good. The most up-to-date version, I think there was a sequel or two for the Xbox and the Xbox 360, but the most recent version I'm playing is called Concept Revolt. It's on the 3DS and 2DS, and it's fantastic. It goes back, it fixes all the issues with it. Translation, game balance, rebuilds it from the bottom up, and it's fantastic. I don't think I've played anything on my 3DS besides this game in months. It's quite good. You build decks like you would in like Magic the Gathering. When you win matches or even when you lose them, you get points that you can use to buy more cards. You can play online against humans, or you can play the campaign mode or against AI. It's wild. It's really good.
No, it looks very, very interesting. I'll have to. I think I'm gonna have to take a look at it. My wife, I was out at Walmart this morning with my wife, and she told me, "Oh, you know what? I really want to buy a 3DS So now I have the perfect reason why to buy her one. Here, honey, this is for you. but this game is for me. No, but she would probably love it. She's also a gamer, and I'm pretty sure that she would like it. Actually, we have somebody on the live stream, Prelude Babe. She's basically asking. And also, this is something I wanted to ask you, because here at the Retro Viking, we are mostly about retro and indie games, but we tend to go more towards the PC. Were you a PC gamer? Like, she mentions a few titles, like, did you ever play Simon the Sorcerer, Discworld? She's also asking, why are you guys all playing the Justin Bieber game?
I can't say I'm a believer. Yeah, I played PC games from, God, early childhood. I mean, I'm a PC gamer since the 80s.
Okay.
I had my dad had an Apple IIc, and I played, Oregon Trail and Number Munchers, and my dad and I, and the kind of infamously impossible Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy text adventure game that, like, is literally impossible unless you've read the book and you have it next to you. Because, like, the only way out of the first 5 minutes of the game is to ask the construction foreman about his digital lock. And if you don't, the Earth is literally destroyed with you on it in the space of 5 minutes. So those old text adventure games like Zork, they had a pretty steep learning curve. You had to really know what to do and think pretty hard about what you're doing, and there's a lot of trial and error. That's what I grew up playing, was stuff like that. And it wasn't until the late 80s that I got a Nintendo. I got it a couple of years after everybody else did. But I'd already played PC games. I played a lot of, like, basketball and baseball games on my Apple IIc with little like, just a step up from Atari graphics.
Yep.
Yeah. But that's where I kind of got the bug for RPGs and sim games, though, because the really old PC games were best at stuff like that. Where, like, the best baseball games weren't, like, the graphical ones.
Mm-hmm.
They were, like, a baseball sim, where it was like, okay, and this is still how I enjoy following baseball. It's just a huge pile of numbers. I love baseball, but I'm a big stats nerd, and I think it's because of this. Like, the best baseball game I played in the 80s was not one with little blocky dudes walking around, but, like, ones that was just looked like a spreadsheet. And you managed a team, and you built, like, a roster, and you just kind of simulate all the games. And yeah, I love that stuff. But I think Prelude Babe's first question, to go back to teaching, I completely agree. And I say this as an English teacher. Her first question says, if I'm into teaching, they should teach more computer stuff to younger generations.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I say that as an English professor. Holy cow.
Especially since the day-to-day life is a lot different from when we were young compared to today. If I know a lot of teenagers, they sometimes tell me, hey, look, they have those the diskettes, the little floppies, the 1.44 megabyte floppies. And they're like, hey, look, somebody 3D printed the save button in Excel. I'm like, no, that's a disk, and we used to. And you have to send an email, and sometimes I'm told, oh, well, how do I send an email? It's like, oh my god, okay.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of practical skills in computing that I taught adult students, like college age students, and even adults got into college not having, and it was, some of it was just simple stuff like typing, but some of it was like, if I told somebody to save something as a different file type,
How do I do that?
For whatever reason. Yeah, someone would just be like, wow, how do I even? But like, it's like, come on. And I spent a lot of time as an English professor with other things to do, like teaching composition, teaching people how to use
Computers, yep.
And it was just a happy coincidence that I'm a turbo nerd and I happen to not about my academic discipline isn't anything to do with it, but I would still I would end up just accidentally out of necessity teaching students how to use computers in 2015 or whatever. And yeah, I mean, there need to be more classes about it in grade school or something.
Yep.
I don't know.
No,
I was getting a lot of students that weren't getting enough.
I fully agree, because the computer back in the day, it was like you needed to be rich to own a computer. They cost so much money, and today the technology keeps on costing less and less. Well, again, it depends on what you want to do with your computer, but everybody has a computer. My parents, they don't game, they're not gamers, they don't have any consoles, but they have computers, they use Facebook, they play Candy Crush, yay. And so I fully agree, and I also think that computers should actually be I think our education system in general, they should take at least a basic class, like exactly how to save a file, how to save a different type of files, how to send an email. Also, I wanted to ask you, Professor, I was listening to one episode where Chris the moderator was talking about he was so good in Punch-Out that he actually got all the way up to, I believe it was King Hippo, without even looking at the screen. And I believe you did tell me that you have a few games that, especially when you were younger, that you mastered. Is that correct?
Yeah. There's a video of that somewhere on the internet, actually, and it's incredible. I sat there and I helped him make a video, and it was amazing to watch. I'm terrible at Punch-Out, so anybody that's good at that game, I'm like, wow. But I can do something similar with Final Fantasy VI, because that is bar none my favorite game ever. I've played it so many times. I can get through all of Narsh and beyond that. I can get to Figaro, far into that scenario without looking at the screen. Like, I've played the game enough times that, like, it's if you don't know for some reason, so the movement isn't too complicated, but it's still like there's a lot of like maps and stuff, and I know based on like memory and audio cues, like where to go, when to do it, including combat, which is actually easier than any other part of that. But yeah.
Yeah, what I'm thinking about is you can even do the combat with where you have to protect Terra with the Muggles. Is it Muggles or Moogles? Moogles, all right. So when you have the Moogles with Locke,
that part's rough. Yeah, because there's the scenario he's talking about is you have this mini game that kind of breaks out where you have these teams you have to switch between, and you have to keep these Imperials from reaching a vulnerable target. And if you can't see the screen, you don't know where they're moving, but always the same. And you just need to know like what the commands are, when to, you can tell from audio cues but luckily early on in the game the combat interface is pretty basic. Like, there's not a lot of options to have to weed through, but Final Fantasy VI is an incredible game. I mean, the mechanics are, I want to say, dated. There's not as much development as there is in like modern games, but the story is incredible, and they put a ton of work into atmosphere and music and theme. The story is an opera, and the whole game, it bakes that theme into every part of it, and it reads and plays like an opera. There's even an opera within the game.
Exactly. I was about to say there's even an
So
opera.
And the music is incredible. I mean, it's the
Yes.
same composer as most Final Fantasy series up through, I think, 10. And I think it's his best work. And, even though it's like, kind of chiptune stuff. But, I mean, the final confrontation has its own 6-part, like 6-movement score. Like
Yep.
it's its own soundtrack within the soundtrack, and it's truly epic. Like it's such a good game.
But no, I fully agree. Final Fantasy VI is actually made my top 5 best games of all time list when I used to blog this type of info, and it's my favorite RPG. I remember buying this back on Super Nintendo when it was Final Fantasy III, and the game was the most expensive game. I'm in Canada, and games used to be around 70 Canadian dollars, which is about like $10 US today. But I remember this game was $100, brand new, and it was totally worth it. I remember the manual that you got with the game was amazing. The graphics, I had never seen prettier graphics. Even today, the graphics are still very, very good. They're like some of the best on the Super Nintendo. The characters are amazing. This is basically what I like, and I know some people will argue, but I don't feel that there's like one main character in this game. There are a few key characters, but I think you end up with, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 16? 13, sorry about that. So you end up with 13 possible characters, and besides maybe 1 or 2 that are like more hidden bonus characters, everyone has an incredible story. We have an incredible villain in Kefka. This is I usually come back to Final Fantasy VI on Facebook. I'm part of different social groups, and I'm part of the Final Fantasy group, and every day or so there's always this, what is your favorite Final Fantasy game? And I see Final Fantasy 13, Final Fantasy 15 is the best, and I'm like, okay, so what are your top 5 games? And a lot of people, and this is what I tend to forget, is that not every Final Fantasy player is like 36, 37 years old like we are. Some are 15, 16, and some have never played Final Fantasy VI, and I'm like, dude, you gotta play Final Fantasy VI. It's like the best one.
I remember when I was, 12, playing this game for the first time. I won't spoil anything specifically for anybody that hasn't played it, but there's a point in the game where you think for certain this is the end of the game. There is everything. The game is aware. It's far enough into video gaming and JRPG genre stuff that like there's established norms and there's established language and symbolism, and these games have like a pattern, and the game is aware of those patterns.
Yep.
And sets up this scenario where it's like, all right, here we go, there's this really crazy thing you got to do. You got to go in here, timed mission, which drives me crazy, but like everything about this mission is like, this is it, this is the end of the game.
Yep.
It's not, and it's not in the most, to me, in my opinion, bar none, the most shocking way I have ever seen in a video game. And I've played more modern games, I've played some indie games. There are some games with shocking endings or shocking plot twists, but this one is like, what? I was stunned when I first played this game. It was like, did I do something wrong? What happened? But yeah, it's incredible.
No,
Yeah.
I agree. Final Fantasy VI has everything. It has the graphics, the soundtrack, and even if you mentioned the soundtrack was like chip tunes and it's like old retro style. I've seen so many like piano collections. The music in this game is so good that many times it was played in like it was orchestrated with a full orchestra, and oh my god, it's like some of the best music that I've ever listened to. My favorite Final Fantasy, one of my top 5 games. So yep, Final Fantasy is. I know that this was one of the games that you referred to a lot on the podcast. You did refer a lot like other games, like I believe you're also a fan of Metroid. Is that right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Metroid, Metroid 2. The other than Tetris, which everybody got, that was the first Game Boy game that I ever had. Had like that old giant brick Game Boy that didn't fit in anybody's pocket. Like
Yep.
that ate up AA batteries like they're going out of style. Yeah, I played Metroid 2.
Super Metroid, I imagine.
Super Metroid. Super Metroid is maybe my second or third favorite game. I'm not that good at platformers like Mario type games. I'll play them. I like them. I'm just bad at them. But I'm pretty good at Metroid, and I just grew up playing that heck out of that game. Like Super Metroid especially is almost a perfect game. I mean, it's really really good, and I get excited whenever there's a Metroid game. And even the 3D one, to like Metroid Prime series back. It took me. I did the same thing with Fallout. I had to like really kind of ease my way into it and give it a chance. But once I did, yeah, Metroid games, love them, but especially the old ones. Super Metroid especially is something else.
The only Metroid that I played was the one on Nintendo. I never owned Super Metroid, but I know it's amazing. Even my friends, they told me, "Oh man, you got to play this game." And I I know we're gonna talk about this in a few moments when we talk about time missions. But I remember just starting Super Metroid, and all of a sudden getting stressed. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll come back to it later, and I never went back to it. But this actually, I wanted to mention something real quick. So this is not a paid advertisement or anything like that, but we're talking about all these retro games like Metroid, and I know another one of my favorite was Earthbound. I believe you're also a fan.
Yeah, that's up there. There's Earthbound, Final Fantasy VI, and Chrono Trigger are sort of the holy trinity of that era. But yeah, Earthbound is another game with incredible twists and an incredible ending. Is up until very recently without. I mean, there's now like a subgenre of indie games that are Earthbound like, and I've only recently kind of gotten to played. There's a really Undertale.
Yes.
I played Undertale a few years ago. A couple years ago, I played Lisa, which I would highly recommend with very bold asterisks. It's not for the faint of heart, and I don't mean that as a joke. It is like a trigger warning level trauma. Like, that game is dark.
What is the name?
Lisa? Like the name Lisa.
Okay.
L-I-S-A.
Lisa, it's your birthday. Lisa on Steam.
Lisa is an Earthbound-like in that it's a very story-driven, mechanic-light
Holy
RPG.
crap.
But it is a black comedy, and the humor is pitch black. But besides the humor, what happens is extremely dark, and if people go into it expecting just like Earthbound or a comedy or something, it can kind of blind you, and you have to be a little careful. Like, if you get triggered by really bad stuff, you might want to avoid it if you're like emotionally sensitive.
Okay.
I mean this like genuine. Like there's a couple of friends of mine that know of the game, have heard the warnings, and are like, I'm out.
Okay.
But it's an incredible game. And it's indie. It's made by like basically one guy. But yeah, it's in the category of an Earthbound type game, in how it plays, how it looks, how it feels, and its sense of humor.
It definitely, I see like the Power Rangers, or I'm sorry, the Time Rangers.
There's Power Rangers in it. There's pro wrestling. There's fish people, which are literally fish with legs.
Why?
Like briefcases and stuff.
Why didn't anybody tell me of this game? Yeah, I see the wrestling now. Oh my god. Okay, so
it's really weird.
Yeah, it's in my wish list. So as soon as I have time, I'll get to it. So yeah, no, definitely, I'm definitely interested in this one. But what I wanted to tell you guys about is I actually made a purchase last week. This is something that was recommended by one of my friends, and I have a coworker that actually bought this. You mentioned that you don't have like a modern gaming system. I found something that's called the Sumosys Model 700. It's a tiny. I think they called them RetroPie engine. So it's basically an emulator that comes in a case. And it comes with over 11,000 games. So you have all the Nintendos, all the Super Nintendos, all the Genesis. You were talking about Earthbound, you were talking about Chrono Trigger. I was going through all of the games in the list, and I was tagging my favorites. So, and every one of them I tagged. So, so this is, I just wanted to give them a shout out. I received it, took only a few days to receive it, no shipping cost, and I'm having great fun. I was scared that the image would not be, because it's an HDMI cable. I was thinking I have like a 49-inch screen, so is it going to be like stretched out? But no, it's the resolution's perfect. Everything is playable. It comes with 4 controllers. You can plug in an Xbox One controller if you have one, or even a PS4 controller. So definitely, if you're looking for something, if you want to get that, retro feeling back again, or even discover new games. Again, highly recommended. I just wanted to give those guys a quick shout out. With that said, we're just going to take a quick 2-minute break, and we'll be right back with the main focus of our stream. So don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back in a few moments.
Hey there, listener. Have you ever wanted to do something special for people in need? How would you feel if I told you there's a perfectly valid reason to stay up and play video games for 24 hours straight? Well, for the 6th year in a row, the Retro Viking will be taking part in the annual Extra Life 24-hour gaming event, and he's looking for partners to join his team. What is Extra Life, you ask? And I'm so glad you did. Extra Life will take place on Saturday, November 3rd, 2018, 8 o'clock a.m. People all across North America will be playing video games for 24 hours straight to gather funds for the Children's Hospital Network. Our goal this year is to reach $2,000 in those 24 hours, and we're going to need your help to make it. There are 3 ways you can help us reach our goal and help us gather money for those sick kids. First, you can join our team by following the link in the description of this episode and help us gather donations. 2, you can make a donation directly to one of the Retro Viking team members. Or 3, if you prefer not to contribute, you can always help us spread the word by sharing this message with people who you think might be interested. Hoping to see you all on November 3rd. Let's make it happen, people!
All right, and we are back from our break. All right, so I wanted to dive in the main theme of today's podcast, and this is again the reason why I propose this topic is based on the Sonic the Hedgehog episode of Flip the Table, where you guys, especially at the end of the Battle of Wits, I don't want to spoil it, but in this case I'm gonna have to, where you won the Battle of Wits, and what was your prize? It was a 1 hour loop of the Sonic the Hedgehog drowning. And even just thinking about it, I'm getting chills. I'm like, oh, I hate that damn song.
Yeah.
So I figured that we could talk about video game timers, some good ones and some bad ones. So there's already a few that we mentioned, and like for me, it was the Metroid, especially the Super Metroid at the beginning, where you have to escape the base. If I'm not mistaken, there's like a timer. It's been such a long time since I played.
Yeah. The beginning of Super Metroid is meant to end of the first game, where the end of the first game you beat Mother Brain, and then you have like 3 minutes, I think, to get up this really long vertical shaft. In the beginning of Super Metroid, you go into like Federation research facility. You find the last Metroid and lose it to Ridley, and then Ridley escapes, and then you have, I think, like 3 minutes to escape the facility, to self-destruct and trigger or something like that. So right off the bat, the game stresses you out. But the rest of the game doesn't have anything like that. I think it's really empty too. But yeah, it's kind of this bookend mirror image kind of thing with the first game. Kind of neat. The time missions always stress me out though.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, in the first Metroid game, you had a different ending. You had like a hidden timer where, depending on how long you took to finish the game, you learned that Metroid dude was actually a girl. I think there was like a bikini one or a special suit one or something.
I think you had to finish the game in under, I think it was 90 minutes or something. It's not a lot of time. I mean, the first Metroid's a pretty sprawling game. But yeah, if you get under, I think it's in 90 minutes, she takes her helmet off at the end to reveal I was playing a game when I was like 8. So to me it was like, what? To a modern viewer that didn't, for some reason, know Samus was female, it seems pretty obvious, or it should be, like, she has hips. Probably was female all along. It seems pretty obvious, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of a, I don't know, early speedrun kind of thing. Like, it's hard to get that ending natural, like, without. You can use the Justin Bailey cheat. If you enter the name Justin Bailey into the password screen, you start with Fire Suit, Wave Beam, missiles, everything you need, and you get like the reveal at the beginning to play the whole game. But yeah, I mean, Metroid had a hidden timer baked into it, and so it's kind of ironic to me that I hate timed missions, but one of my favorite games.
Well, yeah, but again, it's that kind of timer doesn't annoy me as much. Like I believe a similar timer, which is, and again, I'm gonna probably lose all like, we're gonna lose all of our listeners. But the Castlevania games, my favorite Castlevania game was Part 2, Simon's Quest, and yes, that's when everybody tunes off. But that was the only one that I owned, and I played the crap out of it, and it was actually pretty good. I mean, the gameplay was similar to the first one, and there were like 2 timers. There was the day to night transition, which I don't know if you ever saw the classic Angry Video Game Nerd episode. One of his first episodes on YouTube is he talks about that darn box that appears every time it goes from night to day.
Terrible night for a curse.
Oh, yeah. And then it was the horrible night. No, the sun has vanquished a horrible night. Something like that.
Yeah.
I've seen it so many times that it's still stuck in my head. So that timer was actually interesting because it gave you, like, the nighttime. It made the enemies harder. You couldn't shop. So that was actually a clever mechanic. But the one that I didn't even know about was kind of like in Metroid. You had different endings depending on how long you took to finish the game, and I think I always got the worst ending. That's why I never seen a different one until I looked it up on the internet.
Simon's Quest, and maybe I'm in the same boat as you at this point, but Simon's Quest is a good game and was ahead of its time. I mean, it's arguably the first Metroidvania where it took the Castlevania model but made it more exploratory, like a Metroid game, and I mean, it more resembles some of the modern Metroidvania games like Symphony of the Night than older Castlevania games. It behaves more like those, where you're getting power-ups more, and you're permanent power-ups. You're exploring. You have to kind of solve puzzles. It was just a little janky. You know, like it wasn't translated well, so like some of the dialogue doesn't really. Some of the villagers are trying to tell you how to solve puzzles, but they're just bad at it. Yeah, and the day-night thing annoyed a lot of people, but if people are interested in getting like a good experience out of Simon's Quest, there's punch. If people are interested in getting like a good sensibility out of Simon's Quest, there are good ROM hacks of it that aren't like a complete top-to-bottom rewrite of it. You just kind of like streamline it a little bit. Like there's retranslations that make the puzzles make more sense.
Yeah, because I remember some of the clues. They were like, look in the morning star and you will die. I'm like, well, okay, what are you talking about? So yeah, no, actually that I think that's what most of the haters remember were these horrible clues, and it's like, because the gameplay was pretty fun. I mean, it was Castlevania.
Yeah, it was fun. It was balanced. It was hard, but not like Ninja Gaiden 3 hard. Like it wasn't like impossible, and it wasn't unfair. It just kind of seemed that way at times because the puzzles were a little obtuse. But yeah, I like Simon's Quest, and I like timers like that are kind of like not like a finish it within this time frame or you're dead. Can ebb and flow. There's a lot of my favorite games have like a day-night cycle kind of thing. Like game I played a lot when I was younger, also in the SNES era, was Ogre Battle. It was like a military sim thing, strategy kind of. But that had a cycle. Yeah, and some of my favorite games had stuff like that in it. Some of my least favorite games did too. Early on, when I got a Super Nintendo, I rented a game called Draken.
Oh yeah, I remember that one. I bought it. Draken.
The game did not tell you how to do anything. And in the process of having a steep, unclear learning curve, suddenly night would fall. And you're like, okay, what does that mean? Well, it means the constellations in the sky are going to literally come out of the sky and kill you.
Oh yeah, I remember.
You're like level 1 characters, and these things come out of the sky, and you're like, oh, well, I guess I'll stand and fight it.
Yeah, I remember the big dog head. There was like this owl or something that flew, and of course, all of your guys, yeah, they're level 1, and they have like short swords, and there's this one mage that, and I remember in Draken, what was horrible was that the combat was automated. You couldn't do anything besides watch your guys die.
Oh, that's right.
Draken.
Yeah. Draken maybe was trying to teach a young me a valuable lesson in common sense, that if I'm a level 1 character with a short sword and a dragon comes out of the sky,
You run.
I should probably not stand and fight it. Maybe I should have gone with my gut instinct on that one. But yeah, I mean, that one had like a cycle. A lot of games started doing that. They would have some kind of ebb and flow, which is a different kind of timer than that dreaded Sonic the Hedgehog drowning.
And it was funny because this week when I was testing out the retro console that I bought, one of the first games that my wife asked me to try was Sonic 2, and at one point the water level rises in the second level, so you're submerged into water, and I'm like, you're gonna die, you're gonna die, and she's like, no, I'm not gonna die, and of course I'm like, you're gonna die, and then eventually she managed to, just before the timer cut, she managed to get out of the water, so that was pretty epic.
That music by itself was worse than any obstacle to getting breath, because the music was designed to be stressful, and like that's what would get me flustered. I mean, I was talking earlier about my favorite game, a game that I can play without looking at the screen, Final Fantasy VI. To this day, the Opera House, the Floating Continent, the Burning Manor, these time missions, every single one of those will make me stressed out. Even though, like, I should be able to get to the end of it, no problem. Like, I can play the game fine. But still, because of time, because there's a timer sitting there. And I think that's the difference between something like, say, the hidden timer in Metro and what we're talking about, where you could see it. The timer is staring you in the face and challenging you, like, almost mocking. You know?
Yep.
This one's funny, though. Like, the Opera House, this guy, the purple octopus, the Ultron, he says something. They're staging the marriage of Figaro, and he wants to assassinate the diva, the prima donna of opera, and he has like a 10-ton weight up in the rafters, and he says, he tries to shove it off the rafters, and he goes, this is heavier than I thought. This is going to take me like
10 minutes.
6 minutes or whatever. Like, and he's like a comic relief villain. It's kind of perfect. But yeah, even then, like, even though it's like a funny scenario and it's like really thematically weird because opera and it's like comic relief goober like that you're going up against, it still stresses me out because it's like, I got 6 minutes. Like, that's not a lot of time, and I'll get to the end of it. 3 minutes left.
Even when you know what you're doing, there's always this, like, I believe you mentioned that it's on the floating continent. Yeah. There's one point where you get at the end and it says, oh, well, you know, we should wait for somebody, and if you don't wait for him, he's basically dead and disappears for the rest of the game. So you're like, okay, I'm just gonna wait for him. You take one step. There's like a minute left. You take one step to the left, and then it's like, poof, you get into a fight, and you can't run away. It's like, no, you finish with like 7 seconds left.
Yeah, I mean, I've done that my 10th time through the game. Is like make that step, just going like, and like just get. Like, I know that, okay, got to the last spot. I already triggered the dialogue that says, do you want to wait for so-and-so? Yes. Now, all I have to do is stay here and wait. And, you know, it'll show up, it'll be good. Trigger, cutscene, rock and roll. But because that timer is ticking, I get flustered, and I'll just go, is he gonna show up? And I'll take... I no exaggeration, one step backward, random battle with like 30 seconds left, and I can't mash my way through it fast enough, and I lose.
And then you have to fight, what is it, Ultima weapon or the Atma weapon that you have to fight?
Yeah.
Oh man, I remember. That monster had something you needed to steal, right?
Yeah.
He had the chainsaw? No, what? Do you remember what you needed to steal from Atmo Weapon?
Atma has, it doesn't have a copy of itself because there's a
weapon. Yeah, there's a sword called Atmo Weapon. Yep.
But you can get that later. It's something. It's a really powerful.
I don't remember what it is. It's not an Esper.
No. But yeah, the pro tip: if you're feeling a little saucy, the secret way to kill the Atma Weapon in Final Fantasy VI is to deplete his MP. If he is a creature of pure magic, cannot live without it. So if you cast Rasp or Osmos on him, deplete his MP, which is, if you have enough people with Rasp and Osmos, might be faster. It's a defenseless, efficient way to kill him. It still takes quite a few hits, but it's going to be less so depending on how you build.
I was not aware of that. I didn't know that so you can just try to deplete its mana, and there we go. It automatically dies.
Yeah, and Rasp is a spell that damages MP, and Osmos, but it will fill you up. So if you have characters with a high max MP, you can actually do more damage to him with Rasp. It can get ugly hurry. He's got a lot of NP, but he can run through.
I have a feeling that we could just do like a 2-hour podcast on Final Fantasy VI. I wanted to ask you one last thing. I wanted to ask you on Final Fantasy. You mentioned to me that you were able to solo Kefka with so let me ask you, what is the strongest character in Final Fantasy VI? The one that if you had to choose one guy to play through the whole game with only one guy, who would you take?
If you're careful and you don't employ too much overkill, it's Terra. Terra is far and away the most powerful character because of Morph. Morph doubles the amount of damage she does with magic. It's the only way to go. I mean, it's maybe, I don't want to say the easiest one to do it with, but she's the best character, I think, in combat. And in character, and she's rad.
Yeah.
But you have to be careful with her, though, because the game it has to do with hexadecimal numeration. It's like 0 to 255. No one else's build can breach 255 strength except hers when she morphs. If you got her natural strength too high, when she morphs, the enumeration goes above 255, and it will wrap back around to 0. But it will do it just barely. So you get to, like, say her strength is 140, and you morph, and now it's supposed to be 280, but the game can't count that high, so it'll 35.
So she can't hit.
Right, you'll go from dealing 7,000 damage to 8, and in more. And if you do that against Kefka, you're dead. So, and it will do that with a number, like her attack and her magic as well. Final Fantasy VI's mechanic with Vigor doesn't do what the stat's supposed to do. There's been like ROM hack fixes of the game, but I love it with all of his blemishes. But yeah, Terra is incredible. Shadow's not a bad pick either, because Throw will just mow down. It's hard to beat that.
Oh yeah, it's and I remember once I threw Atma Weapon, or I'm not sure if it was that, but I threw like a unique weapon and was like, where the hell is the one that I just got? And I'm like, no, and I had saved the game, and that was back before save states existed, so it's like, no.
Yeah, I mean, there's I'm not gonna get too far down the rabbit hole now, but there's some build for Gao, who is one of the more complicated characters. You have to go to the Veldt, learn monster forms, and then he mimics them, but then he automates, so you have no control over him.
Mm-hmm.
He is both extremely powerful and extremely bad, because as a solo, because you can't control him once you rage it. So You just kind of sheets to the wind. If you're going against Kafka, good luck with that. I've done it, but it's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, especially since he basically berserks as soon as you start using the rage. You can't do anything.
2 characters I haven't soloed with, and I think they're almost functionally impossible to solo them with without hack. Is Gogo and Moro, the secret characters. Gogo is a mimic. Mm-hmm. And if you're soloing with Gogo, you can't mimic.
Yeah, you can't mimic anything.
And Umaro is an abominable snowman. He's a Yeti who automate at all times and will only attack. He does not learn magic. You can equip relics to him that let him use like a cold attack that hits everything, but usually he'll just bash things. He does a ton of damage, but
he's very good to hit things, and that's it.
I don't know if it's even... I mean, I haven't looked this up in a long time. I don't know if anybody on YouTube beaten Kefka with just Umaro. That would be...
That's like I saw some people finish Final Fantasy 1 with like 1 white mage. Like, okay, you have too much time on your hands. I remember there was another game that this is one that I reminded myself when I was thinking about timers. It was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, the dam level, damn level. And just watching the timer, like right down where you see the time go down, and when you slowly stick to a bomb, then you start swimming and you see the timer continues to go down, and when you have a few seconds left and there's the last bomb, and
every part of this level is bad because there's like those seaweed things.
Oh yeah.
And the hitbox is really bad. Timer's bad. Swimming levels are always bad. So it's bad heaped on top of bad, heaped on top of bad. It's just level.
Yeah, that's and I remember a lot of people. There's a lot of people that, and if I remember, if you mess up on one turtle, it's game over. You have to start from the beginning. Yeah. So it's not like you have one turtle that died, try again. No, it's like you need to do this in like 2 minutes and 32 seconds, or else you're dead. And I remember this part, the part with there's like all these forces that are pulling on you, and
it's stressing me out just watching it.
Oh yeah. I'm watching the purple seaweed. This is... do its damage. So yeah, I think we've had enough of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle game. So yeah, this timer was one of the bad ones.
Yeah, I mean, there's timers like this one, or like the Opera House in Final Fantasy VI that stares you in the face and it counts down, or finish it or you're dead. There's the sort of ebb and flow timers like Draken or Ogre Battle or Simon's Quest, where it's like there's a cycle. It's just kind of running in the background, and it has gameplay effect, but there's no like end. But there's also games that, I guess the most typical one we haven't talked about yet is like Mario.
Yeah, Mario. Yeah.
Timer, but it's not. It's less. It's like a constant pressure to just keep going, but it's not like minute. Maybe Gauntlet's maybe a little bit more oppressive, but
yeah, I actually remember. I remember, and by the way, I have to say it just in case moderator Chris is listening. I believe it's pronounced Mario Jumanji or Jumanji. Yeah. Yes, I remember one of the first games that I played. Well, I grew up in the 80s on Intellivision, so there wasn't. I don't remember many games with timers, but I remember playing at my cousin's house. He had this brand new Nintendo Entertainment System, and the first game I believe I played was either Zelda 2, The Adventures of Link, or it was Super Mario Brothers. And I remember this was the first time. Okay, so the screen scrolls. Wow, this is great. And I remember when I died with nothing killing me, and wondering, hey, what happened? And I saw like a time up, or I'm like, oh, what? There's a timer. That's what the time is. So, Yeah, I think we have to give a shout out to the granddaddy of the timers out there. Mario was pretty cool. It was a pretty good game. What's your favorite Mario game?
I think Mario 3. I think I know a lot of the like platformer purists like Mario World, but Mario 3, I played a lot of that back in the day.
Yeah, I'm more of a Super Mario World. Yeah, on Super Nintendo. I did like Super Mario 3. That one was pretty cool as well. I like Super Mario 2 also.
I do as well. Yeah.
So I know not a lot of people like it, but it's a good game. It's fun to play. There's warps. There's secrets. I mean, everything's so colorful.
It was weird too. It was different. I liked it. I always use Toad too.
Yeah, me too. I used to use Toad until you get the warp to get to, I think it's World 4. Then you get the warp to get to World 6. So I still have a pattern. Probably if I would play again, I would remember it. And oh yes, I also wanted to mention one last timer, and this is a little bit different, but it's something that I was actually thinking about it while I was playing on my mobile phone, on my smartphone. I was playing Sega Heroes, which is, I'm not sure if you ever heard of Puzzle Quest.
Oh yeah.
So I was looking for a Puzzle Quest game. Puzzle Quest, the first one, Runes of the Warlords, I believe it's called. That game is amazing. I played thousands of hours on Puzzle Quest, the first one. The second one wasn't, but I was looking for a Puzzle Quest type of game, and I found Sega Heroes, which is I believe it's a new game. I believe it's made by the people that made Puzzle Quest, so it's a gem matching type of game. You have your fighters, and of course they're all like there's a Sonic team, there's the Streets of Rage team, there's the Shinobi team, and you have like the Golden Axe team. And what's really good is that you play, you have some fun, but eventually, those darn timers, the ones where it says you are out of energy, now you have to wait X number of hours before you can play again, unless you want to invite 10 people to it's like, oh my god. Those timers,
something like that. Yeah,
I believe they're called time gates. Oh my god, they're annoying. Let me play your game.
That's a new and terrible type of timer.
Well, again, I understand. I mean, we're talking mostly about free-to-play games, and you like our game? Well, you can either wait 10 hours, or you can pay me like $2 and play again now for another 20 minutes. It's like, okay, yeah. They're kind of like the loot box of the mobile games.
Yeah.
So, do you have? And this is just an out of the. It's out of nowhere question. What games do you have on your cell phone? Like when you go outside, you mentioned you have a 3DS. Do you always bring your 3DS, or are you also a mobile gamer?
I actually don't have any games on my phone. I do, like, if I have any time out and about and I don't have my DS, I think I'll just kind of get on the internet and like surf the internet on my phone. But I don't use my phone to game. But I do have my 3DS with me pretty often. And yeah, I mean, like I said, Concept has not left my 3DS for
forever.
A couple of months. It's really good. But yeah, I mean, for the longest time, my old DS Lite was maybe the best console I had, and I had tons of games for that thing. I just recently got a 3DS, so I only have a few games for that. My DS Lite brought that thing everywhere, and loved it. And even my daughter grew to like it. Last year, when she was about 3, I was playing Rocket Slime on my DS Lite. It's a spin-off from the Dragon Quest series. Makes the cute little slime monster the protagonist, and you captain a giant tank, and you assemble a crew. It's kind of like a sim action game where, like, the sim part is you assemble a crew and you load the tank with ammo that you collect over like a sort of platforming adventure, and then at the end of the adventure, you get into combat with another giant tank, and then you have to like give the crew orders to like run around and like shoot ammo and like try to board the other tank. And my daughter loved it because it's very cartoony, PC, but it's awesome.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, it's called Rocket Slime.
Okay. Yeah, no, and again, once I do decide to get my wife a 3DS, that might actually be something. I have a 4-month-old boy, so he's not going to be playing games yet, but I'm pretty sure in a few years hopefully he's going to be a gamer. I'm going to do my best to educate him wisely.
My daughter would ask, like, she saw me playing it a couple of times, so I was lying on the couch, and she would snuggle up with me and look up at the screen. I'd hold it so she could see it. And she'd sit there and ask me what was going on, and I'd ask her what I should do in certain places, and I finished the game, though, so I went on to something else, something more spreadsheety, I don't know.
Here's how you play D&D.
Yeah. And, when I started doing that, she was like, where's the slime? I want the slime. And I was like, oh, well, I'm done with that game right now. So she asked for a while. It was pretty cute.
All right. Oh, that's pretty good. Well, while we're talking, I'm going through pictures. What I realize is that even though I listen to you guys all the time on my mobile phone, I visit the website once in a while, but there's like all the images from all your previous Flip the Table episodes. Some of them I'm like, oh, I'm reliving all the memories of when because I used to watch them every time that came out. I went to go see the pictures to see what it looked like, and oh my god, the shoot, the McDonald's game, that was such a great episode.
Our glorious leader, first issue, moderator Chris.
Yep.
Did a really good job making sure like every episode has images and videos like attached to it. They're all still there, and they will be for indefinitely.
Yeah. Hopefully, this is something that the cliffhangers. I'm into the Price is Right special when Flip did the cliffhangers. You weren't kidding around when you were saying that Flip did a lot of research. I remember he was telling us that he built this cliffhanger, and man, that was awesome.
We had it right to the very end. Flip the Table Tower, up in the attic where we recorded with all the cheesy games around us. The little cliffhangers thing was sitting in the corner. Yeah, no, it was a riot, and it's funny because we still hear. The podcast ended just over a year ago, last July, and we had 5 years of episodes. We released episodes once every few weeks, 2 weeks at first, and then a month later. But to this day, we'll still get messages on Facebook, or the moderator will get emails from people that say, "Hey, I just started listening to the show." It's like, well, hi. But we welcome them, and no regrets. We went out on our own terms, and we're thrilled that people are still listening to it.
And again, these are so. Each episode you can listen to it, and you don't have to follow the order. And everyone, like I'm taking a look at those Space Jams, the robot bands drawing the Tweety Bird. Oh my god! And I know people that have no clue what Flip the Table is. They're looking at these drawings and they're like, "Man, are these guys retarded?" No, actually, they're pretty awesome.
What those drawings come from is I chose Space Jam, and as the person that picked the game, I did the Battle of Wits. Part of the Battle of Wits was people had like 30 seconds to draw something that I described. So it was like, draw Larry Bird
dunking
Karl Malone.
Yeah.
And like, people don't know who Karl Malone is. Don't know like how to draw. So and they had to do it in like 20 seconds, 30 seconds, something foolish. But yeah, it was just. It was quite a thing. And that was kind of the point, was like, Jared and I were in a competition to pick worst games. Like, we went back and forth for a few years about, like, who picked the worst game of that year.
I think you hold the the crown. You chose Trump. You chose VCR College. Oh my God, that
VCR College Bowl is not a. It seems to be a game, but it is not a game. I chose the Trump board game, which I'll just leave it at that. Yeah, I mean, they're some real treasures. Although we did find some like surprisingly good games. The Star Trek VCR game is better than the name.
Oh yeah, that. Well, I believe I remember seeing. I think every year Flip like or I'm not sure if it's Flip. I believe it's Flip. He moderated the game and added. There was like 4 teams working at one point.
Oh yeah, Flip shows up with like a handmade Starfleet costume. He'll lead like at first it was one table, so he ran like one screen, and he's done it at our local SnowCon in Maine. Every year he's run it, and done it for 4 years now, and by the 4th year he's done it, he's run 4 tables of 6 people. And so there's 24 like nerds at a con crammed into this room, like watching this VHS tape from 1991.
Oh man,
a defunct sci-fi show. It's great, but yeah, the Star Trek one was actually good and thrilling. I mean, the flip the table philosophy, I think, like, maybe to loop back around a little bit to the timers of video games, is like, there's a philosophy that we started to adopt in Flip the Table that no matter how cheesy or mechanically bad, like, objectively bad, if you had fun or it was exciting, it's a game, so if you had fun, then it succeeded. I think, like, as much as time missions stress me out, if part of the enjoyment of playing a video game is excitement and that like thrill, it works, man. It might be like the thing I hate most about Final Fantasy VI might be one of the things that makes me like it. Is the time missions are some of the most compelling parts of the story because it's like but yeah,
I think they definitely are some of the aspects that we tend to remember a lot. We tend to remember more.
The Ninja Turtles game is its own thing. I'm not. That's off the table. But yeah.
Oh yeah, the Ninja, and also the pizza power game with the battle flipper.
Moderator Chris made a mod for that game. That's actually really good. Yeah, it's a terrible game without it, but. He made like his own rewrite of the game's rules, get a little bit more interesting and challenging, make it more of a game.
Did he post them on BGG, on Board Game?
So.
No,
yeah, it's out there. It's out there somewhere. We played it at the Extra Life event the last couple of years. So yeah.
Nice. All right. So I think that's about it for regarding the timer. So I wanted to ask you, since we are out of time. No, I'm joking. Do you have any special projects that you're working on right now? And also, can you let us know where can we find you if you want to follow either Flip the Table or if you want to follow Professor Laserbooks?
Flip the Table still has a relatively active community on Facebook. If you just look up Flip the Table on Facebook, we have a group there. All of our contact information is on Twitter handles and that sort of thing. Mine is Prof Laserbooks on Twitter. What I'm doing right now, and I kind of had to like set it aside because I had like too many hobby projects to do, so I just kind of like, okay, I'm gonna finish some of these things that I have to do and then get back to this later. Because I started a blog. It's about a lot of stuff. It's about writing. It's about sci-fi. It's about Magic the Gathering. It's a board game. Laserbooks.net. And the blog hasn't updated in a few weeks, but I'm going to get back to updating that actually pretty soon because I'm just now starting to finish the stuff that got that backlog. So yeah, but it's just kind of a project. It's nothing too special, but if you're interested in, I hesitate to use the word think pieces because I'm not that smart, but some of them are like just kind of deep dives into like concepts in board games, concepts in Magic the Gathering, like looking at like conquistadors in real life as opposed to the conquistadors in Magic's Ixalan, stuff like that. yeah, I'm working on fantasy novel, The Mo Things Change, because I like puns. I'm a dad, so dad jokes are part of my repertoire. So yeah, I have a lot of stuff in the works, and I had to kind of clear out a lot of backlog, working on board game prototypes and short stories and long fiction, and I had to kind of get sorted out. I'm going to get back to the blog. So laserbooks.net is my website, and that's active. Flip the Table is no longer active, but all the episodes are up. Like you said earlier, there's 111 or so episodes over 5 years. They'll be up, definitely. People can check that out as well. I should also mention Flip the Table has his own podcast as well.
Exactly.
Yes. It has a totally insane title. I have to look it up, get it exactly right.
It's a Super Saturday serial. Wait, I'll get it for us. Super Saturday board game serial. There we go.
Where I've done a couple episodes on there. It's a
yes.
It's about board game. Sure. It's weird and funny and awesome, and it's a humor podcast about board.
Exactly, and I was. Well, you kind of stole my thunder. I was about to I was about to mention it, but yes, indeed, I did listen to those episodes, and again, they are great. There's no battle of wits, but still the content, and I told Flip when he did his pilot episode, guys, if you want to know how to make a pilot episode, you got to watch episode. I believe it is episode 00. It's, oh my god, it's like the best pilot episode ever that I've ever heard. It's I believe it's the super secret. Where is it? There we go. Super secret episode X. So it lasts about 20 minutes, and it's some of the deepest 20 minutes that you guys will ever hear. And I was immediately excited when I heard that it was. I believe it's Gil Hova, that he's one of the creators. Of one of my favorite board games, The Networks, which I say it's one of my favorite board games. It's only because I always wanted a UHF board game, and I got it. My only problem is I did not have time to play it yet, but I know it's one of my favorites. I'm gonna keep it. It's one of my rare board games that I didn't. It's
really good, and The Networks has like a legitimate like board game pedigree. There are serious board gamers that will swear by The Networks, but it's also really cheeky and funny. It's a really good game. Gil Hove is a good dude. He's a friend to Flip the Table, and he's a board game designer.
Yes, and he gives out most of his secrets to his success in episode X, super secret episode. So make sure that you guys go and take a listen to this one. It's an amazing one. So so I think that's about it. So I'll make sure to leave all of your links for laserbooks.net. The Flip the Table website. I'll leave all the links in the description once this episode comes out, and also I'll make sure that I leave also your profile link so that people can keep track of all your upcoming events and everything. So with that said, I want to thank you again, Mr. Chris Barter, for joining the Retro Viking podcast. This was a wonderful time, and we're over 90 minutes now, and it's been a blast. So we'll definitely have to do this again sometime.
Thanks for the invite.
All right. So with that said, I want to wish everybody to have a nice night, and I'll see you in the next one. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Retro Viking Podcast. This episode was made possible thanks to our Patreon supporters. If you'd like to support and get involved with the podcast, become a Patreon today. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube.